Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me for our solo playthrough of War of the Ring. This playthrough is taking longer than I had suspected, so I'm going to try to move things along, and I'll just be filming the critical parts of the playthrough. The Shadow player has a total of 3 dice in the hunt box. Fellowship is currently in the Druiden Forest, and they are revealed. They're currently being led by Smeagol. Free People's player will use a character die, and they're going to hide the Fellowship. Sauron's gaze has been turned to Dol Guldur and Moria, and the Shadow player is going to use a muster army die, and they're going to move armies. Their first step will be to move this force from Parth Celebrant into the besieging force in Lorien. Second move is going to be the forces in Nir Harad are going to move into West Horander. Free People's player will use a recruit faction die, and they're going to recruit the Eagles of the Misty Mountains. If the Fellowship's last known position is not in Rivendell or Gandalf the White is in play, you may use one muster or recruit faction die to bring the Eagles into play. All right, so it says here on starting setup, we place 2 Eagles in Eyrie. All right, so we'll place 2 Eagles in Eagles Eyrie up in the north. The Shadow's gaze has been placed on Mordor, and they're going to play a muster army die, and they're going to move armies. They're going to move this force in Osgiliath to Minas Tirith. They're going to leave 1 army behind, and these forces are going to join with the existing forces of the First Army. That will give them a total of 10 regulars, 1 Nazgul, and 2 spiders. Free People's player is going to use an event die, and they're going to play the card Smeagol Helps Nice Master. The Smeagol Helps Nice Master special hunt tile is now in play. Add the tile to the hunt pool when the Fellowship is on the Mordor track. All right, we'll add that tile in our pile of tiles to be added once they arrive. Shadow player's gaze has been turned to Isengard. And the Shadow player is going to use a character die to move an army. Now, in the case of Saruman's units, he has a special ability called Servants of the White Hand. Each Isengard elite unit is considered to be a leader, as well as an army unit, for all movement and combat purposes. So we're going to activate this force for movement, and they are going to attack Helm's Deep. The Rohan unit is going to go into the siege, and we'll place him in the siege box of Helm's Deep. Free People's player are going to use a muster army die. They're going to play that as a muster die, and they're going to play a faction event called the Ents Awaken. Recruit 1 Ent figure in the Entwood. Then play 1 faction card, faction event card, or shuffle all Ent faction events, including this one, from the discard pile into the deck. Well, they're going to play one. So we're going to add an Ent to Fanghorn, and we're going to play the faction event, March of the Ents. Take an Ent figure from the Entwood to march the Ents, or eliminate an Ent figure from the Entwood to attack a Shadow army, rolling 3 dice and scoring a hit for each 4+. You may repeat these 2 actions multiple times in any order. So what we will do is we're going to eliminate 1 Ent unit, and we're going to move an Ent into the Fords of Isen. Sauron's gaze is turned to Dol Guldur and Moria. They're going to use a character die to activate the Second Army, which consists of 6 regulars, 1 elite, 1 spider, and 3 Nazgul, and they're going to assault the fortifications in Lorien. All right, the Free People's player have 2 units, And they have Galadriel and a leader. That'll give them a total of 3 rerolls. They're playing the card Brave Stand. The shadow player rolls 1 less die in combat for each companion present, to a minimum of 1. And the shadow player has a total of 6 regulars, 1 elite, a spider, and 3 Nazgul, giving them 3 rerolls. They're going to be playing the Call to Battle card, Webs of Shadow. Play if there are spiders in the same region as the Shadow Army. If, after the leader reroll, you scored more total hits than your opponent, including hits from any Free People's pre-combat attack from a combat card or faction Call to Battle card, you may eliminate one of the spiders to score an additional hit. All right. And the shadow player scored no hits. Free People scored 2. Shadow player is going to eliminate 2 regulars. They're going to continue the battle by reducing their elite unit to a regular. This next phase of the battle, the Free Peoples have no card that would be advantageous for them. Cards they do have subtracts 1 from the dice of the shadow player. Well, he's already attacking only on a 6, so that won't help them. They'll be rolling 2 dice. The faction will be rolling 5, and they're playing the card Hideous Speed, and that is a Call to Battle card. Play if there are spiders in the same region as the Shadow Army. Before the combat roll, roll 1 die. On a result of 1 or 2, eliminate one of the spider figures. On a result of 5 or 6, eliminate Free People's leader or a level 1 companion in the battle. The roll was a 3, so there'll be no action on this card, and we'll resolve the battle as normal. And the Free Peoples once again have scored 2 hits, none for the shadow player. So we'll have to remove 2 regulars from the Shadow Army, and that is going to end the battle. Lorien is proving to be very tough nut to crack for the Shadow. And incidentally, how we're handling these Call to Battle cards for the Shadow player is we're adding those cards into their total, and we're counting those amongst the standard event cards when we make a die roll to determine whether or not the Shadow will be playing a combat card. And then it is, if so, it is randomly drawn. Free People's player are going to play a muster army die, and they're going to move armies. They're going to start by moving the elves from Moria into Dimrill Dale. Their second move is going to be to move the elves in the Grey Havens to Tower Hills. Shadow players' focus has been turned to factions, and they're going to play a recruit faction die, and they're going to make a recruit. They'll recruit Broods of Shelob by adding 1 spider to Dol Guldur and another to Minas Morgul. Free People's player have 1 die remaining. They're going to play an event die to play the card Swords in Eriador. Recruit 1 North unit, regular or elite, in the Shire, and 1 Dwarven unit, regular or elite, in Ered Luin. Then draw a strategy event card. Okay. They're going to recruit a North elite in the Shire, and they're going to recruit a Dwarven elite in Ered Luin. And we're going to draw a strategy card, and that one is revealed to be Riders of Theoden. Recruit 1 Rohan unit, regular elite, and 1 leader in either Edoras or in a Rohan region containing a companion. Okay. Shadow player's focus has been put to Umbar and Harad. He's going to play a character die to move this force from West Herondor into Pelagar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so we're good there. That force is going to move into Pelagar. Shadow player is up next. He has his final die, and he's going to play an event die to play the card The Fighting Uruk-hai. Play if Saruman is in play. and if an army containing an Isengard unit is besieging a stronghold. Well, they're doing that in Helm's Deep. Attack that stronghold. The siege lasts for 3 combat rounds instead of 1. During the first round, the Free People's player cannot use a combat card unless a companion is in the battle. Well, they don't have one, so we're going to play that out. Saruman's forces were successful and they have captured Helm's Deep. There were no casualties for the Shadow player, and the lone defender in Helm's Deep was destroyed. That is going to award the Shadow player 2 victory points. He is at 3 now, and that is going to bring the turn to a close. We'll begin a new turn. The Shadow player has 3 eyes in the hunt box. The Free Peoples are going to use a character die, and we're going to advance the Fellowship. That moves the Fellowship progress marker to 1, and the Shadow player will conduct his hunt. Now the Witch King, Chief of the Ringwraiths, is in the space, so that will entitle him to 1 reroll. It ended up that the hunt was successful. We drew a Smeagol tile, and I believe we have to draw another one since Smeagol is the guide. And no, the tile is not dismissed. It's considered to be a hunt damage 0, and as long as Smeagol has not been dismissed from the game, the hunt tile is valid, so there'll be no damage. Shadow player is up next. His focus, his gaze is set to Isengard. Shadow player is going to use a character action die to activate the force in Helm's Deep, and they're going to move into West Emnet. We'll leave 1 regular behind as a garrison for Helm's Deep. Free People's player is going to use a event die, and they're going to play the card Riders of Theoden. Recruit 1 Rohan unit, regular or elite, and 1 leader in either Edoras or in a Rohan region containing a companion. All right. And they're going to recruit a leader and an elite unit in Edoras, and we're going to replace that with an army marker. So that force in Edoras now contains 2 leaders, 3 elite, and 2 regulars, and Gandalf the White and Merry are also present. I'm leaving them in the space rather than putting them in the army in case we want to move those. And that will be the play of Riders of Theoden. Shadow player's attention is turned to Rune and Angmar. And I think they're going to play a muster die, and they're going to recruit. And Rune is going to, North Rune will recruit an elite unit. Free People's player is going to play faction die, and that is the recruit or play faction event card. And we're going to recruit, and we're going to place 2 additional eagles in Eagle's Ire. It's a total of 4 eagles. I checked, it should only be 1 eagle for recruiting, so we only place 1 there. Shadow player's focus is on Angmar and Ruin, and I think the Shadow player is going to use a muster die, and they're going to recruit, and we're going to place 2 regulars, 1 in Angmar and 1 in Mount Gundabad. Free People's player is going to use a muster army die, and they're going to play that as an army die. And they're going to make some moves. They're going to move 1 elven unit back to Moria, and they're going to move this force of elves into South Ered Luin. Shadow's focus is now on Moria Dal Guldur. Alright, the Shadow player is going to use a character action die to play the faction card Evil Things. Play if the Fellowship is not in a region containing a Free People's settlement. They're not. Move all spiders up to 2 regions. Then, if at least 1 spider figure is in the region with the fellowship, discard 1 spider figure to draw a hunt tile. All right, so that's what we're going to do. Now, Region 1, or Army 1 in Minas Tirith, has 2 spiders there, so we're going to be able to move that into the fellowship's location. That's the purpose of the card. But we're going to use that also in the Dal Guldur region. So we're able to move spiders up to 2 spaces. So we'll move 1 and 2. I guess we'll put that in Dimril Dale. It can move into a space within enemy army. We'll also move these spiders 2 spaces. 1, 2, 1, 2. And then from Minas Tirith, we're going to send 1 spider into the space with the fellowship. And that comes out of Army 1. It moves next door into the space. And then we're able to, then if at least 1 spider figure is in the region with the fellowship, discard 1 spider to draw a hunt tile. If the tile shows an eye, discard it. Otherwise, follow the rules for a normal hunt. All right, we're going to discard a spider, and then we're going to draw a hunt tile. Tile is revealed to be 1 damage and a reveal. All right. Well, we're going to take Smeagol as the casualty. That will wipe out the hunt damage. So we're going to take Smeagol as the casualty, and it says here, if Smeagol is eliminated or discarded in any way, except being replaced by Gollum, the event card We Shall Get It immediately enters play. Okay. The We Shall Get It card is going to be played on the table. If Gollum is the guide, discard We Shall Get It after a hunt tile has been drawn and before hunt resolution begins to draw another hunt tile. Apply the effects of the second tile and place the first tile back into the hunt pool. So that's going to remain on the board. Now the fellowship has been revealed, so we're going to move that to the revealed side. They're able to move 1 space on the map, and I think they will move into Osgiliath. The chief of the Ringwraiths will be able to follow. All right. So Smeagol's been removed as the guide, and Strider will take over again. The Free People's player are going to move, and they're going to play a muster army die that will allow them to move 2 armies. And they're going to move this force into South Anduin Vale to threaten Dal Guldur eventually. And we'll also move the other Elven army that is in South Ered Luin, and we'll move that to Cardolan. Sauron's gaze is turned to factions, so we're going to play a recruit die, faction recruit die, which we have over here, and we're going to recruit. And we'll recruit some spiders, 1 in Dal Guldur and another in Minas Morgul. Free People's player is up next. He has a Will of the West die. He's going to play that as a character die, and we are going to hide the fellowship in Osgiliath. Shadow player's focus is turned on Isengard. They're going to use an army die to move some armies. And they're going to move this army in South Dunland, including the Hillmen. I'll move that into the gap of Rohan. We'll leave 1 behind. And then as a second movement, they're going to move this force from North Rune into the Vale of the Carnan. That'll be the second move of the army die. Shadow player's final die is going to be played as an event die, and they're going to play the card, The Ring is Mine. The Ring is Mine special hunt tile is now in play. Add the tile to the hunt pool when the fellowship is on the Mordor track. Okay. That's going to complete the round. We'll move to the victory point check. The Shadow player is now taking the lead 3 points to the 2 for the Free Peoples, and we'll begin a new round. All right, the Shadow player has 3 eyes in the hunt box, and we'll begin phase 5 with the Free Peoples player playing an action die. And they're going to begin with a character die, and they're going to move the Fellowship. That'll move it up to a progress of 1. Shadow player will now conduct his hunt. He's going to end up getting 2 rerolls, 1 for the Orc Regular and 1 for the Chief of the Ring Wraiths. Shadow player's hunt was unsuccessful. We'll place that character die into the box. Sauron's focus is turned to Umbar, and he's going to make an attack. Forces in Peligor are going to attack Laemden. He is going to play an army die and use that to attack. Free Peoples player will defend with 3 regulars. They have a leadership value of 2. Shadow player is going to be attacking with a total of 9 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 regular Southrons. They have a leadership value of 3 for the 3 Nazgul. Is that 3? Nope, that should only be 2. And then they have 4 Corsairs. Now we'll see if we're going to be playing some combat cards. Free Peoples player are going to play the card No Quarter. If your combat roll or leader reroll scores at least 1 hit, score 1 additional hit. And we have Desperate Battle. Both armies add 1 to all their dice on their combat roll and leader rerolls. Okay. Free Peoples players scored a total of 2 hits, and with their No Quarter card, they're going to gain an additional hit for a total of 3. But unfortunately, the Shadow player has rolled 4 hits, and that's going to completely wipe out the Gondorians. Those are all gone now. Shadow player has to lose 3 units, and they will lose 3 regulars, and they're going to take Laemden. Shadow player's forces are going to advance, and since Laemden is adjacent to the Western Sea, the Corsairs will be able to go with them. So this entire force is going to move into Laemden. Now Peligor is currently undefended, but I don't think there's going to be a huge threat to that anytime soon. So we'll move the entire force in. Okay. Free Peoples player is up next, and I think they're going to use a character die, and they're going to separate companions. I think what they'll do is they're going to separate Strider from the Fellowship. He would be able to move a total of 3, which is his leadership or his level, plus 1 from the Fellowship track for a total of 4 regions. He's going to move 1 into Peligor, 2 into Laemden, and 3 into Dal Amroth. Shadow player is up next. His attention is turned to Rune and Angmar. I think he's going to play a muster army die, and he's going to recruit. And we're going to recruit 1 regular in Rune, North Rune, and 1 in Umbar. Free Peoples player is going to use a Will of the West die, and they're going to bring in Aragorn, heir to Isildur. If Strider is in Minas Tirith, Dal Amroth, or Peligor, and the settlement is controlled by the Free Peoples player, even if it is under siege, you may use 1 Will of the West action die to replace Strider with Aragorn, and that's what we're going to do. So we'll replace his model with the Aragorn model. That is going to give us an extra action die for next turn. We'll add that to the dice pool. And now that also means that, of course, I forgot to mention it, but Gimli is the last companion that is in the Fellowship. Shadow player's focus is on Harad and Umbar. Shadow player is going to use a muster army die, playing that as an army die, and they're going to play the card Oleg High. Play if Sauron is at war. Recruit 1 Sauron unit, regular or elite, in a region where a shadow army is present. They are going to recruit an elite unit in Laemden. Free People's player is up next, and they are going to play an event die. To play the card, There is Another Way. Heal 1 corruption point. Then if Gollum is the guide, you may also hide and move the fellowship following the normal movement rules. Well, he's not the guide, but that will heal 1 point of corruption, bringing them down from 4 down to 3. Shadow player is up next, and his focus is on Mordor. And we're going to attempt the final assault on Minas Tirith. So we're going to play a character die and activate the Nazgul in the first army. There's 1 Nazgul there, and he's going to launch the attack on Minas Tirith. Shadow player has a total of 10 regulars, a spider, and 1 Nazgul. That's going to entitle them to 1 reroll. Free Peoples have a lone Gondorian infantry units, and they're going to play the card Confusion. Every unmodified die roll of 1 in the Shadow player's combat roll scores 1 hit against the Shadow army. Any result of a 1 cannot be re-rolled again during the leader reroll. And the Shadow players played Webs of Shadow. Play if there are spiders in the same space. If after the leader reroll you scored more total hits than your opponent, including hits from Free People's pre-combat attack, you may eliminate 1 of the spider figures to score an additional hit. Well, that won't be very useful. We're down to only 1 defender, but we'll see what happens with this. Both sides failed to score a hit, and the Confusion card is going to end up causing 2 hits on the Shadow player. So he's going to have to remove 2 armies, and the siege is going to continue. He cannot renew the attack because he has no elite units. Free People's player is going to use their play faction event or recruit faction die. They're going to play the card Paths of the Dead. If Strider or Aragorn is in a Rohan or Gondor region, including a stronghold under siege, move him and any number of companions with him to Eric. The Dead Men of Dunharrow faction is now in play. All right, so we are going to move Aragorn to Eric. And now the Paths of the Dead card will bring in the Dead Men of Dunharrow. And the card says if Aragorn or Strider is in or within 1 region of Eric, including regions across the mountains, you may use 1 muster or recruit faction die to bring in the Dead Men. Well, we're doing that off of the card, so we'll see what the effects are on that. And starting setup is 2 of the Dead Men of Dunharrow are placed in Eric. So we'll place those Dead Men of Dunharrow in Eric. All right. Shadow player's focus is on Mordor. They're going to play another character die, and they're going to launch the attack on Minas Tirith again. And this time the Shadow player was successful. He has removed the final Gondorian unit from Minas Tirith, and they've taken control of Minas Tirith with no further casualties. That's going to boost them by 2 points on the victory point level. They're up to 5 now. And we're going to mark Minas Tirith as a shadow-controlled fortress. Free People's player have 1 die left. It is a Will of the West die. They're going to play that as an army die. And they're going to attack. The Free People's player are going to attack Dol Guldur. The lone orc garrison is going to go and enter into the siege. We'll place that in a Shadow Stronghold siege box, and we'll place a shadow control marker on the space. These spiders are also going to be a part of the siege. Put those in the siege box. And that was the final action die for the Free Peoples. We'll move on to the Shadow player again. Well, Free People's player has a chance to win if they can get Dol Guldur, so we're going to have to do something with that. The Shadow player is going to play an army die, and we're going to make some movements. And the first thing we're going to do is abandon the siege of Lorien. And we're going to make a move into Parth Celebrant with that army. So the siege is now broken in Lorien. And our next We have one more movement left with an army, and I think we're going to move the force in Minas Tirith into the Druidan Forest. And we're going to leave behind a sizable garrison there. We don't want to be going through this anymore. So I think we will leave behind 2 regulars. Leave those behind. Our final die is a faction die, and we're going to use that to recruit, and we're going to recruit some hillmen. We'll place 1 in North Dunland and 1 in South Dunland. And that's going to complete the phase. The victory check is the shadow player has 5 victory points and the free peoples have 2. They can get 2 more, we'll win. All right, we're starting a new round. Shadow player currently has 2 eyes in the hunt box. And we're going to begin with the free peoples, and they're going to launch their attack on Dol Guldur. They're going to play a muster army die, and the elves are going to attack Dol Guldur. All right, the elves are attacking Dol Guldur. They're going to get 2 combat dice. The shadow player will get 1. He's playing the card Webs of Shadows. If after the leader reroll you scored more total hits than your opponent, including free people's pre-combat attack, you may eliminate 1 of the spider figures to score 1 additional hit. Okay, so we'll see what happens. Amazingly, the elves have managed to inflict a hit, taking the Sauron regular out, and they have conquered Dol Guldur, giving them 2 additional victory points. They technically have enough to win the game if they can hold on until the victory point check. Shadow's focus is on Moria and Dol Guldur. They're going to play an army die to move armies. And the Shadow Army from Parth Celebrant is going to move into Western Brownlands, and the First Army is going to move into the Western Emden Mule. And they've got to try to recapture Dol Guldur, otherwise they're going to lose. Free People's player is up next. They're going to play a muster army die, and they're going to move armies. They're going to move this elven force into South Downs, and they're going to move an elven force from the Woodland Realm into the Old Forest Road. We'll leave 1 behind as a garrison. All right. Shadow player's focus is on Mordor, and the problem is if we don't retake either Moria or Dol Guldur, they're going to lose. So the problem is the shadow player has 4 event dice, a muster die, character die, and a recruit faction die. They do have 1 elven ring though, but that's going to be very tough. So I think the best they can do is to utilize a character die, and they're going to move an army with a leader. And I think what they'll end up doing then is moving that first army and combining it with the second army. I think that's the best thing they can do. So we'll do that. We're going to end up combining it into 1 single first army. And that'll be their movement. That army now consists of 9 Sauron regulars, 2 spiders, and 4 Nazgul. I'm sorry, actually it's another spider. So we're going to place that. That's 3 spiders. All right. Free People's player is up next, and they're going to play a Will of the West die as a muster army die. And they're going to use that as an army die to move armies. And I think what they're going to do is get a flanking force from Lorien into Parth Celebrant. Galadriel will stay behind with 1 elite. That'll be the first move. Second move will be to get this elven army into Holland to guard Moria. I think that's what they'll do. Shadow player's focus is Mordor, so we're going to use that Mordor army to attack Dol Guldur. And I think what they're going to do is use a event die and the elven ring to change that into an army die. And that will allow them to attack. And the elves are going to go into a siege. So we'll place those in the siege box for Dol Guldur. Well, I just looked at something. The remaining dice that the shadow player has are 3 event dice, a muster die, and a recruit faction die. They have no ability to attack or move an army with these dice and with the cards that they have. So they have no ability to retake Moria or Dol Guldur in this turn. So that means that the Free People's player are going to win with 4 victory points. So I think I'm just going to close the video here, and I'm going to give a little bit of my post-game thoughts on the system. Well, that concludes the playthrough using our solo system. I'm fairly happy with the way that the tables worked, and it is, to me, it's more enjoyable than me trying to play this by myself without some kind of guidance from the table. So I think it's a success. One thing I am going to do is I'm going to make an adjustment on Soren's gaze table. There was, I think, in my opinion, too many actions for Umbar and Harad and not enough for Isengard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move Isengard, which was normally activated on a 9. I'm going to move that to 8, and the Umbar and Harad will be moved from an 8 to a 9. That will greatly increase the amount of activity from Isengard and limit the amount of activations from Umbar and Harad. I think that will be a definite plus to the situation. Other than that, I'm pretty happy with the stuff, the way it played out. It was enjoyable for me, and it's nice to just not have to necessarily think too deeply about the opponent's actions. This table gives you a priority of the table, and you just have to kind of look at that area and make a best play in the area that the table selects. So it takes a lot of the analyzing out of it, and you can kind of just play your own game then, so to speak. So I think it's a success. I'm happy with that, and I'm going to make these changes to that table, and we'll see how maybe that plays out in the future. Well, thanks for joining me for this series, and I hope it was enjoyable to you, and I look forward to seeing you again at the Solo Gamers Club. Our next series is going to be of my new purchase, and that's Final Girl. So I hope to see you then. Thanks for watching, and have a good evening.